Maybe it didn't make sense, but I didn't want to live in my childhood neighborhood when I inherited an apartment from my mother. I sold it and bought another apartment in the area of the same level, in exactly the same ancient block of flats. It made me feel free from all the memories of a miserable past. At last, I had my own apartment, not a rented one, where I could be alone. For a while, I rejoiced about this whenever I returned from work. I was in a good mood that evening too. Walking up to the entryway, I saw a man. He was wearing slippers, and obviously housewear, with only a jacket on top. The man was shuffling around. His face was red with cold. He looked at me and made a gesture as if he was lighting a cigarette.
Wait a second,
I said, walking toward the man and giving him a light.
I got out and understood that my lighter was gone, and I'm too lazy to go back up to the 4th floor.
The man explained.
My wife makes me go outside to smoke. She says the smell seeps into the apartment from the balcony, and it is too harmful to my 5-year-old daughter. You have such a little daughter?
I said aloud in surprise. The man was about 20 years older than me.
Yes, my wife is young, and my daughter is about to go to school. Lucky me.
The man smiled, revealing deep wrinkles. On the one hand, I was jealous of him, thinking, what's wrong with me? Why do young girls choose such faded men instead of me? And on the other hand, if this guy had a family after 40, then maybe I still had a chance at a relationship. I pulled out my pack and stood next to the man. I didn't know anybody in my house yet. Why not meet a neighbor?
My daughter is really weird,
the man went on to say.
She asked me to buy her dolls, but she spoils them, pokes out their eyes, or paints their faces. I asked, why are you doing this to the dolls? And she said, because they are more beautiful than me. I told her she is the most beautiful, but she still spoils them. Perhaps you should take her to a child psychologist?
I blurted out, just to keep the conversation going.
Nowadays, it's some kind of trend to take kids to psychologists.
The man brushed me off.
She is just a little girl, kid's whims. She'll get over it.
The man breathed acrid smoke on me. Damn, what was he smoking? Probably the cheapest cigarettes. Now, I understood why his wife kicked him out on the street to smoke, and I still didn't understand why my modest financial situation embarrassed anyone, why I was rejected because of my poverty, while others were not. I caught myself thinking how much resentment I had accumulated.
So, are we neighbors?
The man asked.
You must have moved in recently, right? Yeah, just a couple of weeks ago.
I answered.
I am Marcus. Nice to meet you.
The man held out his dry palm to me.
Tim.
I introduced myself and shook his hand.
See you later,
he said before leaving. I went to my apartment to spend another lonely evening. I have no family, no one at all. My mother's dead, my friends are out of town. Romantic relationships. I don't remember the last time going on a date. The next time I met my neighbor was a couple of days later. I saw him smoking again in the evening on my way back from work. I joined him, wanting to chat with someone just for fun rather than a business. But Marcus had a request, and he immediately admitted that he hoped to meet me.
Listen, Tim, my daughter's really getting a little jumpy with those dolls. I don't think it's serious, but she doesn't sleep and cries from time to time. So I thought, no need to see a psychologist. It's clear enough that the child doesn't get enough sunlight. The girl sees so much drabness every day. My wife is also melancholy. She gets worse and worse. You know, I want to take them to the south for a couple of weeks. To the sea. That's a good idea,
I said, trying to understand what he was getting at.
Yes.
Marcus nodded.
My wife and I haven't been on a vacation for a long time, and Mary has never been to the sea at all. I wanted to ask you, my wife is worried about her plants. Would you mind watering them a few times? You live just above us. I'll leave you the key, so you can come by after work, huh? Well, it's no problem,
I said, It was strange that a man who barely knew me would trust the keys to his apartment. Why wouldn't he ask other neighbors he'd known for years? It was as if Marcus had read my mind and explained,
You know, I don't have anyone else to ask. Most of the people here are old. They can forget. And you seem to be a nice guy, not a drinker. You don't drink, do you?
"No," I said.
Here are the keys.
Said the neighbor.
Don't take it too seriously. You don't have to sprinkle them or anything else. If the soil in the pots is dry, just water them. Okay.
I agreed.
Thank you.
Marcus immediately replied. I turned out to be an unreliable guy after all. Only 4 days later, after the keys were left to me, did I remember about my neighbor's flowers. I ran to water them. My irresponsibility didn't lead to disaster. The flowers hadn't wilted in a few days. Besides, there weren't many of them. Just a couple of pots of unkillable geraniums, and a few other plants whose names I don't know. The atmosphere in Marcus's apartment seemed very gloomy to me. It was clean and tidy, as if for the arrival of guests, but the curtains were drawn in every room. Darkness, silence, only the clock on the wall was ticking, along with that doll in the living room. I didn't notice her right away, so I flinched when I saw her porcelain face. It was crossed out with a marker, just as people cross out mistakes. That silent look. Why are dolls so creepy? Probably because of their resemblance to humans. The brain recognizes it as a human face, but it's not a person in front of you, staring without blinking. It's scary to think about. Maybe Marcus's daughter had similar feelings, which is why she poked out their eyes and crossed out their faces? Or maybe she was just a strange girl. But why did they put this damaged doll on the shelf, as if it was a decoration? Pondering this, I suddenly realized that I was meddling. The flowers had been watered. Why was I still contemplating the furnishings of someone else's apartment? Shaming myself for this, I went to the exit, and at the threshold, I clearly heard my name. "Tim?" Someone called to me from the room. A familiar female voice. It was like I'd heard it 100 times before, but I couldn't remember who it could belong to. Who was calling my name? There was no one here but me. I looked into the room again. It was empty, just that doll with the crossed face. Of course, I imagined it. I didn't hesitate any longer and left the apartment. It felt good to do such a small thing for someone. I was so unsociable that being useful, not at work, but in life, seemed so important to me. It was just a little favor I did for a neighbor. There was no need to go there the next day. The flowers didn't need watering, but it didn't take me long to walk up to my neighbor's apartment. I took my shoes off, packed into the kitchen, went into the nursery. There were no other dolls. The one with the porcelain head seemed to be the last one left in the apartment. For some reason, I wanted to get a closer look at her. Her crossed out face wouldn't leave my mind. I went into the living room, approached the shelf. The doll looked into my eyes.
You're not so scary,
I said aloud. At the same second, something ran into the room from the corridor. The creature looked like a woman, only it moved unnaturally, nervously, like a puppet being pulled by strings. Before I could react to this sudden appearance, a boot flew into my face. "I hate you! Hate you!" The creature screamed. The woman's head twitched, but her face remained motionless, and her mouth didn't open. Then the creature, either human or puppet, began to back away and disappeared into the corridor. Fear made me forget how to breathe. I inhaled sharply and noisily and bent in half. I remembered the heavy boot that had been thrown at me, hitting my nose. But it wasn't on the carpet in front of me. It was gone, disappeared like fog. It was unclear now whether I had actually seen everything or only imagined it. I cautiously looked out into the hallway. It was empty, so I rushed out of the apartment, running back to my housing without even locking the door. The puppet-like creature, it was my long-dead mother, or rather, something that looked like her. Everything that happened was exactly the same as one of my worst childhood memories. I was 7 years old, studying first grade. It was hard to do my homework, and every now and then, I would call my mother to help me. It annoyed her a lot. She burst into my room red with anger, threw her shoe in my face with all her might, and yelled that she hated me. "Mom, Mom, 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 leave me alone!" she shouted. I got over it again. It scared me. The pressure of loneliness made me crazy. Hopefully the flowers won't wilt in a week, I thought, deciding that I would never go there again. It was my decision, but that didn't mean I had no desire. A strange, irresistible urge to return to that apartment appeared in my head. The doll. It was like I had to check her out. I had a feeling someone was waiting for me there. One weekend, I couldn't take it anymore, so I went. The reason is still uncertain. To water the flowers? Ridiculous. I pulled back the curtains in every room to let in the sunlight. It wasn't so gloomy now. Then I sat down on the couch and stared at the doll with the crossed out face. I kept staring, as if waiting for something to occur. Nothing happened. I stared into those eyes, not being able to stop. It seemed to me that it would never end. The hypnotic stare. It took an effort for me to get up off the couch. The idea of turning the damn doll to face the wall seemed to be good. She had to stop hypnotizing me. But as soon as I got close to her and reached out with my hand, a voice called out to me from the hallway. "Tim, what the hell are you doing?" It was Sharon's voice, but it was somehow distorted, and I didn't even immediately recognize the inanimate, mechanical tones. It was as if the girl's figure hadn't walked, but rather rolled into the room. Her head was lowered, her arms hanging limply along the body. Her lips didn't move as she spoke. "Tim?" I asked. "What are you doing?" she said again. I stood frozen with my hand outstretched before I could reach the doll on the shelf. "Are you proposing to me now?" the mechanical voice asked. "Sharon," was the only word I managed to utter. "No, Tim." The creature's head was spinning and twitching like a bird's. "No, I won't marry you. Are you out of your mind? Please stand up. Have you seen it in romantic movies? Stand up now. Do you think I'll change my mind and keep the baby? No, I won't do that." "Sure, you've been..." My lips were whispering something inaudible. "What are you proposing to me now?" The creature's voice was becoming more and more distorted and unnatural. "Marry? Give birth? And then what? A homeless club? We'll move to rented apartments with a baby? Live on a pittance? I don't want that. Go to hell with your ring, Tim. Go to hell." The human-sized doll laughed. I remember. It was supposed to be hysterical laughter, but Sharon's voice was so distorted that it sounded like a wail, like a screech. I wanted to plug my ears, so I couldn't hear it. The creature turned sharply and moved back into the hallway. There was silence again. I stood in the empty living room. It was clear to me now. This doll doesn't like to be touched. It was showing me the worst days of my life. Was this the kind of trick this doll used to do with Marcus's daughter? Now, I understood why the girl was nervous. Sharon. We hadn't seen each other for more than 5 years. As soon as she came back from the clinic, she immediately said that there were no more ties between us and that we didn't need to be together anymore. I don't know anything about her now, neither where she is, nor with whom. Apparently, she left town. I felt bad about the hallucinations the doll was putting me through, but at the same time, I felt an abnormal need to experience the past again. For some reason, I desired to meet the likeness of people who were long gone in my life. No one has been in my life for a long time. Every time passing by the door of my neighbor's apartment, I was drawn to it. Strange. It was already the 3rd week, and the neighbor and his family still hadn't returned. I didn't get his number to call or text. Where had they gone? Somewhere deep down in my heart, though, I wanted them to stay there as long as possible. This way, I could keep going to that apartment, sitting in front of the shelf like a madman, staring at the doll with the crossed out face for hours. Sometimes, I purposely tried to touch it so that it would show me something awful. What's going to happen today? Would Grandpa grab me by the chest and yell that he was going to disfigure me? Or will my mother beat me up again? I didn't miss those memories, but for some reason, I wanted to see them again. Why? I couldn't answer that question for myself. It turned into an addiction. I had already left my neighbor's apartment and was locking the door when the old man from the next door apartment showed up behind me.
What were you doing there?
He asked tactlessly.
Marcus asked me to water the flowers while he was at sea.
I answered, though I didn't believe it myself. How long has it been? A month? More? I lost track of time, and I didn't care.
Is Marcus resting at sea?
The old man asked incredulously.
Yes, he went to the south with his family.
I tried to speak in a relaxed tone.
His family? With his wife and daughter, I suppose?
The old man spoke in a mocking tone.
Yes, of course. With them.
I was getting annoyed.
Look, kid. He doesn't have a wife, and he hasn't had a daughter for 10 years.
The neighbor finally explained.
Marcus lives alone, and he's got some problems with his head. Do you understand? What are you talking about?
I was seriously surprised by what the old man had said.
They passed away a long time ago.
The old man spoke seriously.
His wife took their 5-year-old daughter and went out the window from the 4th floor. Such a tragedy. Haven't you heard about it? It was a long time ago. Marcus went crazy with grief. He started telling everyone that it was because of the doll. His daughter used to spoil dolls, cut their heads, drew on their faces, threw them out the window. She was so mischievous. Marcus bought her a doll with a porcelain face at a flea market. He thought the daughter wouldn't dare to spoil it. The girl liked it very much. She still painted that doll's face too. And then this misfortune happened, so Mark connected these two events. He said that the doll turned out to be cursed. It couldn't bear the insult, so it drove his wife mad and made her do all that. He was telling it to all the neighbors, so did to me. Are you serious right now?
I listened to him and couldn't believe it.
I wouldn't joke about such things.
The old man continued.
He started to tell me that his wife and daughter came to him. Also, he said that the doll was sending him visions. He wanted to throw it away, but was afraid to. One day, he would make up his mind and run away from it. He must have left you the keys and escaped. To the sea. Aha! He might be wandering madly in the dumps somewhere. Or man, don't go there. We should call the police.
I should have suspected something was wrong. The nursery in that apartment looked as if no one had played in it for a long time. Moreover, the plants that needed watering had grown bigger in their pots and looked like tall weeds. Hardly anyone really cared about them. Marcus wanted to get away from that damn doll, but why had he left me the keys to his apartment? Why had he made up that whole story about the sea? Everyone thought he was crazy. Maybe he really had gone mad after living too long with that doll and began to believe that the images that were appearing to him were real. The man could have believed his own delusions, or he could have just lied to me so that I would become the new toy for this doll instead of him, so that she would finally let him go. A doll that plays people, reaching into the darkest corners of memory, pulling out the most painful memories. It makes you addicted to them. You sink back into your past. It was scary and disturbing, but it was life. Something was happening. People who are now dead were alive there.
Enough,
I decided. I didn't want to end up like Marcus. I would have a real life, not in the nightmarish illusions of the past. That man would never come back. I was sure of that. That's why there was no point in keeping the keys. I purposely wandered into unfamiliar yards and tossed the bundle into a random trash can. That was it. Now I was free. The next night was hell for me. Locked in my house, I was getting crazy with the oppressive boredom. I couldn't sleep a wink. Wandering from room to room, images flashed through my mind. The doll with the crossed out face, my pseudo-family, mother, father, grandfather, my ex-girlfriend, their frozen faces, and distorted voices. I was going crazy. I craved them. I was tempted. At that moment, I was ready to leave the house in the middle of the night and go looking for that yard, rummaging through trash cans to find the keys. Then I was thinking about breaking down the door and getting into the neighbor's apartment, sit across from the doll, and look into her face, just stare. I had to stop myself several times from doing that. There were other thoughts. What if I act like that woman? Open the window, finish that nightmare? No, I would never do that. After somehow surviving the crazy night, I went to work. The whole day I was pissed off, trying to comfort myself by thinking that I just had to get over it. I would definitely be free of this curse. On my way home, I looked at the 4th floor windows. There stood ungroomed plants. Soon they will wither without watering. My mind was looking for an excuse to go into that apartment again. No, I walked up the steps, stopped briefly at the door of that apartment. I didn't have the keys anymore, and there was nothing but boredom and loneliness waiting for me in my flat either. When I took off the shoes and walked into the room, my heart sank. The doll with a crossed out face was standing on the shelf. She was staring at me with unblinking eyes. I didn't care how she got into my flat. "You're here. I missed you so much," was the only phrase I could utter.